Hello and welcome to Ironclad Circle. My name is Bill and today we're going to be talking about prepping priorities. Okay, today I'd like to talk about prepping priorities. To be honest with you, I shot this video already one time and it ended up being 28 minutes long, so I learned that I can be very long-winded. So I'm going to keep this really short because this isn't super in-depth how to prep for each category, but this is just what categories to prep for first if you're just getting started. So if you're an advanced prepper, this probably is not for you unless you're just curious how other people do it. When I'm thinking about building a bug out bag or a vehicle kit, or even just starting out in any kind of preparations, the best way to do it is probably think about where do you live? You know, are you prone to hurricanes? Is that something you're gonna have to deal with? Blizzards? Civil unrest? Are you gonna be bugging in? You know, are you out in the country and maybe, you know, you can just kind of fortify where you're at and have all your supplies there? A bug out situation where you have to grab your pack and just go. I guess it all depends on what the disaster is, but I always look at what's the biggest threat I have here. When I lived in Colorado, the biggest threat was, you know, avalanches or bad snowstorms or getting lost in the woods. When I lived in DC, well, the urban unrest could have been a problem there, and and it's so congested there that, you know, it's a whole different set of problems. And in Florida, hurricanes, obvious one. Hurricanes are relatively easy to prep for as long as you do it in advance a little bit. But so that's what I'm going to talk about today. Is I have a friend that talked to me. You know, they know that I have a military background and I have some gear and stuff. And sometimes when I got started talking about prepping, and you know, people get interested and they don't know where to start. So this is where to start. This is how I start, anyways. So how I think about it is this: no matter which, if I'm thinking of like bug out or vehicle, the first thing I think about in a survival situation is water, because you can't go very long without water. And if you've ever been dehydrated, then you'll know that it doesn't take long before some of the symptoms of dehydration begin to cripple your ability to think clearly. You start getting muscle cramps. It's miserable. If you drink contaminated water and you start vomiting or having diarrhea, that's just going to compound your problem, and you're going to be useless pretty soon, and you're going to be dead not long after that. So water is a very, very high priority. In the category of water, there's a couple different ways of looking at it. Water is very heavy, so you need some transportable water, whether it's a canteen or one of those backpack bladders, or something like that. So that's one way, but you're never going to be able to carry enough water if you're going for more than, you know, a day or two. So you also need to know how to source water, which if it's a bug out situation, you want to know your local area. You know, there's rivers all over the place and streams, but are they contaminated? Are they fed by storm drains? They have motor oil and animal feces in them, probably. So, well, hey, even if you're out in the country, I'm out in Colorado, I lived there for about a year. Even in the far backwoods, we were warned to purify our water because Giardia was a pathogen that was in the waters, and people got sick from it. So, you know, you have to take precautions no matter where you are. Plus, there's old mining operations up in where we were in the western slopes, and who knows what kind of contaminants are left over in the soil leaching into the water system. It's just really hard to tell. It's funny, no matter where you go, no matter how secluded, you'll find the signs of humans being there in the past, including trash and garbage, and so you got to be careful. Anyhow, so water, you need the knowledge, you need some transportable, and you need a way to purify it. And purification comes down to gear and skills. So again, water in and of itself is just one massive subject. So we'll cover that sometime later, but this is just about prepping priorities. Gear is a great place to start, and a skill acquisition and knowledge acquisition. You can learn your local area very quickly, probably by calling your local water company. People like talking about their jobs, especially when it's a little out of the ordinary. So, okay, number 2 is fire. And other people may not think of fire as such a high priority, but first of all, you can purify water with it. You can scare off, local fauna. It's a tool. It keeps you warm. You can cook with it. I mean, there's a lot of things that fire does. And the reason I have it so high on the list is because I find it's very easy to have a little bit of gear with you. And I have a couple pieces here that are just to show you. So the flint with the stick that just, sparks. Easy little keychain. And it's not intrusive at all. And you can actually get ones that are smaller than this if this is too big for your keys. Then they have a little bit more heavy duty one. I like this one. This was Gerber, I think. But it has a big striker and a big thing there, and even some Morse code on there. This is a little bigger. You throw it in a car, you throw it in a pack. These aren't that expensive, so you can get a couple of them. You can put them everywhere. I threw one in my wife's purse. I'm like, hey, just keep this in a corner somewhere. She doesn't even notice it, she's fine with having it there, and she learn to use it a little bit. So fire, yeah, super important. There's a lot more to fire than just having a piece of gear. Finding things that can burn in wet conditions and snowy conditions. How to build a fire from the ground up, from the timber to the fuel. These are all skill sets, and you can practice those. But having the gear is first and foremost. You can also, I like this one too. I keep this in one of these in my wallet. But this is super, super simple. And all this is you can see it's very thin, fits in a credit card slot. It's a magnifying glass. We went hiking the one day and I wanted to test it out. Put a little pile of leaves together, got the sunshine, boom, fire in like no time. So very, very convenient, doesn't use any fuel. You just need a sunny day. If you have a sunny day, you can save matches, you can save lighter fluid, and you can save your striking stick, which actually lasts a long time, but hey, every bit counts. Okay, so fire, again, skills, gear, and knowledge of where to get burnable timber. Third thing I think you need, the way I look at it, is protection. Because now we've secured water, we maybe even use the fire to purify our water, and now we need protection because you have a valuable commodity, and there might be somebody out there who wants to take it away from you. So our bare minimum requirement for protection would be a knife. I mean, a decent knife. And a knife is more than a weapon. A good knife is a tool, and that tool can be used to make other weapons, whether it's a spear or even short javelins, bow and arrow. I mean, that's much easier said than done, bow and arrow. I've tried it. I've yet to succeed, at least like total wilderness bow and arrow, but eventually I will. But atlatl is actually basically just a curved piece of wood. You put your spear in it, and it's a force magnifier for your throwing. And with a little bit of practice, you get relatively accurate. You'd be surprised. But anyhow, protection's important. There's wildlife. There's just tons of stuff, and I feel better being armed at all possible times. So I put protection on that list, even though I know some groups don't even mention it. Fourth thing would be shelter. Now shelter is important because exposure to the elements will wear you down very quickly. It'll sap your energy, it'll get you sick, it'll make you miserable. If you can't sleep at night, you degrade your ability to think. If you can't think, you die most of the time. So shelter is, again, shelter's a tough one, but in your bug out bag or in your car, vehicle kit or wherever, having a little half shelter, like a shelter half like in the military, or even some rain ponchos and some paracord so you can actually build a simple shelter to get out of the bad weather, is really, really good thing to have. So, but that's the gear side of it. The shelter building side of it is very, very deep subject, and I've built shelters and I've had shelters fail on me in the middle of the night. So it does take practice to build a decent shelter, especially if you want to get one that you're off the ground. If you want your body off the ground, those are tougher than you might think. Something that seems secure for a couple hours with your body movement, you're shifting a little bit, and those little things are moving, sometimes it's not fun. But anyhow, that is a skill set that can be acquired over time with a little bit of practice, and I suggest that, again, wherever you live, it might be the mountains, the desert, the woodlands, in the swamplands. These are things that you have to learn how to build shelters out of the materials that are in your environment. And don't forget about man-made materials. You know, just because you're in the woods doesn't mean you're not going to come across old tires and sheets of plastic. I mean, these things are around, and if you learn to build just from the wilderness, great. But don't forget you can augment them with other things that you find. Like I said, human garbage, it's everywhere. And last but not least is food. Food is, again, a skill. Acquiring food is more difficult than people think. People who don't hunt think, oh, I'll just go out, I'll just hunt squirrels. And it's not that easy. Plus, there might be a lot of other people out there hunting depending on what the bad situation actually is. And the animals might not be that plentiful anymore until you get way deep into the woods. And then you're going to be competing with people who have been hunting their whole lives, and those guys are really, really good at what they do by comparison. So, and fishing, again, if you don't fish, it's harder than you think. So get out there and get a little bit of experience doing those things, and it'll go a long way. I also think some emergency rations definitely have a place, because especially in a bug out situation or a vehicle kit, you don't know, it comes so unexpected. And, you know, you can't, sometimes you might not be able to spend your first day or two hunting food or looking for food. So having some emergency rations, which are, with all the competition in the market nowadays, the price of them actually come down, and people are actually making really good ones. They don't all have to taste like blocks of chalk wrapped in, you know, aluminum foil anymore. So there's some good stuff out there. It's relatively affordable. You know, obviously, if you're storing up for years, you know, you can build that up over time. You can buy a week at a time, buy a week's worth of food every month or something, you know, and you can build up a stockpile. And later on, I will do some reviews on some of the food that's out there, because there's some really good stuff. And that's my 5. So we have water, fire, protection, shelter, and food. The wild card is first aid. First aid is super important to prep for. Poorly used first aid gear can actually hinder you more than help you, because, you know, too tight of a tourniquet, not properly cleaning wounds can lead to infection. So you got to be careful. And so first aid kit's great. A little bit of training is much better. So have both. And, you know, your need for first aid might come a lot sooner than number 6 on my list, depending on your situation. You know, broken windows, climbing over barbed wires, all that kind of stuff. They're real possibilities, but minor injuries are generally easy to treat. A quick, easy first aid kit is not bad to throw together, but I highly suggest getting training or having somebody in your immediate group that has extensive training, because the more the better when it comes to medical stuff. So the last thing I want to say about that is keep up to date on your tetanus shot as well. I try to get one every 8 to 10 years. I think they're good for 10 years. And, you know, if you get into a situation like that and you have to climb some barbed wire, you're going even through an old house, if some of those old wires and nails, you're scrounging for wood, and those nails get you and they're rusty, you definitely want to be protected from that, because it's not something you're going to be able to really get after in a, you know, total collapse type situation. So keep up to date on your tetanus shot. It's always a good thing to do anyways, and you don't have to wonder about it if you get it on somewhat regular schedule, and every 8 to 10 years I think is ideal. So there you go. That is my list, and thank you for watching. And we'll cover all of these subjects way more in depth, each one individually, because they are very deep and broad subjects. So thanks for watching the Ironclad Circle channel, and see you next time. Stay prepared.